Welcome back to another episode of the Empower Grief Journey podcast. I'm your host, Chris Mamone, and I'm an acceptance coach who helps people heal from grief, loss, and trauma to discover their self acceptance and step into their personal power. This podcast is your dedicated space for healing, growth, and transformation. Each episode shares insightful and inspirational stories, along with practical tools and actionable insights that can help guide you along your healing journey. Today, I have a special guest with us. Her name is Sheila Kamuda, founder of Live Out Loud Coaching, is an empowerment coach helping women lead with confidence. She was inspired to become a coach through two events: her personal healing journey after the loss of her husband and her 15 plus years of leadership experience. As Sheila explains, we can lead either by worry, stress, anger, fear, and limiting beliefs, or we can lead with confidence. Sheila's own journey showed her how to reclaim her personal power and choose confidence over fear. Sheila's memoir, Party of One, is about cherished moments from her life with her husband and insights to help others struggling with loss. Her upcoming book, Say Yes to Yes, is about saying yes to clues along your path, which are often hidden and which lead to incredible opportunities. She hails from New York and lives in her beloved Chicago city and is a theater junkie and is blessed to be Sydney's mom. So, without further ado, Sheila, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. I love being here. It's a thrill.
Likewise. And I'm really excited for you because when we talked about a month ago, you were in the process of writing your new book, and it sounds like it's coming out here pretty soon.
Yeah. It'll probably come out end of September or beginning of October. Yeah.
That's exciting times for you.
Yeah. Really exciting.
So,
Yeah. It's amazing
well,
how we evolve. We just keep evolving and growing. That's the key, right? Yeah.
I think that's the big reason I run this podcast and have people like you on as guests is to share with people that we're always going to be somebody different at every point in our life. And no matter what we go through, for me, losing a grandfather, losing a child, for you, losing your husband, we're always going to be a different person going through these grief journeys that we walk through life. And
Yeah.
I was really inspired when you and I met because your book, Party of One, sounded truly amazing. And I thought that was a great way to honor your grief journey with losing your husband, and also in the same crossfire, helping other people learn how to navigate through grief.
Yeah. Yeah, I love this book. Yeah, I love because on one side, it's memories, it's little vignettes, and it's not overwhelming to read. It's an easy read. And on the other side of the page is a reflection, something I learned about going through it all. Like, in other words, take the time you need. Don't rush because a friend wants you to rush through your grief. Things like that. So it's my memories and something I could look back on, and some of them are humorous, and also the insights that I learned that could help other people that are going through it. Yeah.
So Sheila, I wanted to give you a few minutes as we get going on the podcast here. Tell us a little bit about your grief journey that you went through, because I can't imagine what it's like to lose a spouse, number one. I haven't had that experience in life,
Yeah.
but I know that that was a trying moment for you when you went through that. And just tell us a little bit more about that grief story.
Yeah. So Bob had become ill, so it was something I had a few months to prepare for. Okay. It wasn't just a sudden, it was still difficult, but I had time to wrap my head around it. And we had a 15-year-old at the time when he passed away. And I remember that when he passed away, it's funny, I am from New York, so I didn't even drive. We lived in Seattle at the time. And Bob just like did everything. He retired from work. He was older than me. He retired when Sydney was 2, and he just took care of everything. And I did all I went to work and I did all that stuff, but he did all the other stuff. He cooked, he did everything. It was just amazing. And when he was gone, it was just, I was truly a party of one. And I had to get used to being on my own, being a single parent, because we were close and we did everything together. We made decisions together. And it was a good life. And when he was gone, what I found, and I don't know why I started to do this. Well, I always journaled. And what I found was I needed to speak to him. I wasn't ready to give him up. I needed to talk to him and tell him just anything. So I started writing to him, and I started to write a letter a day to him. And I had journals in the house. So I would write these in journals and I would date them. And it would be something as simple as I finally paid that medical bill. Or, Sydney graduated high school and we're looking into colleges. Or then it would become things like, hey, remember when we went on that trip? That was so much fun. Remember when you said that to the waiter? And it was just, I just needed to communicate with him. It's sort of, I felt like it was maybe people would be like, oh, you're not letting go. Well, no, I wasn't letting go. I wanted to hold on. And that was my way of holding on. And I was very happy about that. And I did this for, well, for years. And I would say and I didn't know if it would help. I had no clue it would help. Nobody told me to do it would help. Every day it was 5 o'clock and I'd be like, I got through another day. And then in the evening, I would write to him. So I would try to get through the day and be like, okay, now I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write a letter. And so that got me through every day as well, besides getting my kid, doing what I needed to do for Sydney. And I didn't know. And then after a year, I'd be like, okay, I got through a year. And after 2 years, I got through 2 years. And I was like, oh my God, is this never going to change? And something started to happen, I would say around the fifth year of me just going through the day, going through the motions, not knowing if anything would ever change. I started to, something was a transition, something started to happen where I started to think of myself a little bit more. And it's like I took the sadness for a moment and put it on a shelf. It was right there if I needed it again, but I started to do things more for myself. And at the sixth year, I started to write in the journal a letter and no words came. It was like, oh, I feel like I'm okay. And if it's okay, I actually put this in the prologue of my book Party of One. It's so interesting. I forgot I had written this. I wrote, when you hang on and stay in pain and live with a hole in your heart, you cling to what was, you don't heal. When you start to inch forward, you start to breathe again, just a little at first. You're reluctant. You don't want to move on, not alone. And so you stay imprisoned. But when the day comes that you start living for you, the healing begins, one tiny moment after the next. I was like, oh, that's what started to happen. I started to do things, and it started with something so simple. I took a piece of art off the wall that he preferred more than I did, and I put a piece of art on the wall that I liked more, and I felt a lot of joy. And I'm like, oh my God, it's like I put the sadness aside for a moment. I started to laugh at movies. I realized it didn't diminish my feelings. It doesn't diminish your grief. It doesn't diminish anything. It doesn't dishonor anything. When you start to live for yourself, little tiny steps, it helps the healing, for me anyway. Yeah.
That's a really beautiful prologue. I absolutely love that. And I can certainly resonate with you from that standpoint after going through a hard loss myself that, I resonate with that moment you talked about where you reached a point after those years that nothing came more. Nothing was coming out. The words weren't there.
Yeah.
I think it's a very interesting pivot point in our healing journey because we can't always say when that day is going to come for us. Some people, it might be 3 months. Some people, it might be 3 years. It's really an individual journey.
Absolutely. And we all have to, honor each other and respect that journey, because everybody's journey is different and every loss is different. So we have to be very mindful of that with other people. It's very difficult for people who haven't been through it because it's very difficult for them to not really understand that feeling, that hole in your heart that you have. And it's very hard to get past it. Yeah.
It, it really is. And I just wanted to say I'm very, very impressed. And I remember when you and I first talked, you telling me you wrote letters every day for 5 years.
Yeah.
You're the only person I've talked to who's done something of that magnitude.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what was it like when you started putting together the book Party of One, when you were reflecting back on all these letters you wrote, Bob, over 5 years? Because that's a lot of letters to go through.
Yeah, it was just under 2,000 letters, and I looked at the letters, but the book itself, I don't use the letters in this book. I talk about the letters in the book as one of the memories. These were more like memories of a trip we took or memories of a moment in our life. But the letters were always behind me. That's perhaps another book called Dear Bob. This isn't a book of letters, but that propelled me to write about, I needed to write about our memories. So in other words, instead of looking at each letter, which I did, I started to just pull from my memory times we had together, a time we went to Tuscany or a time we went to Normandy and it was a funny moment, and a time Yeah, Bob, yeah, it was so interesting. He was a really scrappy kind of tough guy, but there was a lot of sentiment, and he would cry, not boohoo, but cry at Casablanca. He loved that movie because they were doing the right thing, and it was the right. He cried at things like that, justice, and I remember Sydney. And so Sydney was 14 at the time. We were watching Casablanca, and Sydney comes down the stairs and for whatever, and sees Dad tearing up and has one word for me and says, Casablanca. And I put that in the book because it's okay to remember these. When I think about that and I read this book over, it's not sad. That's what it uplifts me. It's like I could remember that and laugh. It's a funny memory. And it reminds me of him. And it was like an internal joke that our family had, and the kid knew it. And so that's what I wrote about. Those are the kind of memories I wanted to have up. I love being uplifted. I don't want to bring anybody down. I want us to feel good. I don't want to stay in that place of pain, but we still honor it. Those two can live together. And that's what I wanted to do with Party of One. And the reason I called it Party of One was because I like eating out, and not fast food, eating out, dining out. And in the beginning, I would go and I'd be really reluctant, and I'd be feeling really weird. And the waiter, whatever the person at the door says, how many in your party? They do that. And I'm like, oh, just me. And then when I started to feel more confident and I felt better about myself, I'm like, I'm a party of one. Here I am. Where's my table by the window? And it's just like Party of One started out as something so sad, and it became something very empowering. Yeah.
I really love that for you. And I wanted to talk about what you said a couple seconds ago about, being uplifting and being positive. Because I think the grief space has a lot of pressure from society to be always positive, always up, always upbeat. Like, push your grief aside. It's always so painful. And I do think that there's some merit to keeping yourself positive and upbeat. There's also the reality that grief doesn't always go away. It will, sometimes for people, it rears its ugly head at the most inopportune times
Right.
as they're trying to heal or as they're trying to go to work or they're trying to live their life. It comes up in many ways. How do you strike the balance between that?
Mhm. Yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. And the grief doesn't go away. It's there. It's there. But for me, what started out as feeling sad every single minute of the day, every minute of the day, no matter what I was doing, there was sadness, became a celebration of his life. And that's what helped me. I decided to celebrate. On his birthday, I would go out. On our anniversary, I would go out. The memorial I did for him a month after he passed away was a celebration of his life. In fact, he used to do the New York Times crossword every single day in ink. That was his thing. That was his quiet time in the morning. And at his memorial, I had a crossword. I think it was on his birthday date, and I blew it up and I had one at every single table so that people could do the crossword celebrating what he used to do. And
I
I'm like,
love that.
yeah, it's not, and again, it's not that false positivity. That's not what I'm talking about. I get what you're saying. It's not that, it's real. I really do celebrate him. He loved La Boheme, the opera. When I go and see that, I'm thinking of him. I'm celebrating him. Yes, I'm completely sad, completely. And at the same time, I'm celebrating somebody amazing. So the two can kind of live together, but it's not a false sense of snap out of it. That's not it.
I
Right.
really appreciate you breaking that down because that's something that I try to explain to people when I get asked questions about my own perspective about how grief can be empowering for you. And I always say it doesn't mean that you're always happy and grief doesn't exist and it's never going to be there and those hard feelings are gone. They're always there, like you said. They're
Yeah.
always sitting there. And you can always go visit them whenever you want. That's the best part of
Right.
it. You can always do that.
Right.
But I love what you brought up about going out to La Boheme opera and celebrating and honoring him. I think that's the piece that isn't toxic positivity at all. It's actually celebration of life, like you're discussing, and that's
Yeah.
where I think we make that big shift from grief and sadness over to celebration and honoring. And I think that's the piece that helps us move forward with our grief.
I agree. Because you can't force yourself to be happy. That's not what it's about. That's ridiculous also. And it doesn't really work. It's not sustainable because it's not real. But you can celebrate someone. Oh my God, I could celebrate someone because that's like that's makes sense. That's a real thing. But you can't tell somebody to stop being unhappy or to stop being sad. That's just ludicrous, actually, because we're human and things are gonna come up. There are memories that are gonna come up. You know, I remember that I don't cry often. I don't know, I'm just a pretty strong person, and I just hold it together. And I remember this was after Bob passed away. Sydney and I would go to the theater together in Seattle, and there was a show that we had seen before, and it's very, very sad. And we knew what it was about. We knew it, we've seen it, no surprises. It's called Next to Normal anyway. And it's an amazing musical. And for some reason, don't ask me why, and I had tissues with me just in case, I could not stop crying from the beginning to the end. It was almost like it allowed me in the darkness of the theater with the music and everything. I just completely let go and let feelings out. It was kind of interesting and incredible. You just go with your feelings. You just go with it, and then afterwards you could feel happy and you can feel all the things. You don't have to feel a certain way. That's another thing too. People feel like, oh, I'm not supposed to be sad now, or I'm not supposed to laugh in a movie or not. No, it's all ridiculous. You're human. You can have all these emotions. Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges people have going through grief is that they feel like they need to suppress emotions all the time. And it's almost like when we're around people that don't hold space for us or don't really understand why we haven't gotten over it in a certain amount of time. And so we start masking ourselves all the time. We start saying, oh, okay, well, I can't be like this in front of this person. I've got to be this person over here. And the crazy part about that you just described, by the way, is that when we do give ourselves permission to release that emotion, it's like taking a burden off ourselves. It's allowing us to feel, and then it sets us free in a lot of ways to actually experience the other side of emotions, maybe that celebration factor.
Yeah, I feel like we have to just go with our intuition and go with how we're feeling and not be told by anybody or not feel that we're supposed to act a certain way. But I would never feel I'm not made that way anyway. So it's sort of like nobody can tell me how to feel. I'm like, what? That would not work with me. But people feel also when they're in a situation, they feel very weak. They feel it's almost like when they've lost that person, if they were very close, they've lost themselves, and that's a problem. And I did too. And so we have to find ourselves again. This is the biggest thing. We were a team, and now I have to find the way myself without this other person. It's very difficult. Yeah.
I, I love what you just brought up there about losing ourselves and having to rediscover ourselves, because
Mhm.
something that I'm a big believer in is that grief is something that in a lot of ways takes away who we were in our past life and moves us into this new person that we haven't really fully met yet, and we don't fully understand who this new version of ourselves is. And I think that's why grief in a lot of ways is very uncertain, very unknown, and it is very scary for a lot of people. And I think that's why we experience so much emotional volatility as we go through grief, is really
Yeah.
trying to, step away from who we were to step into who we're becoming.
Right. And yes, it's interesting because during that 5-year period, when things started to shift for me, the one thing I started to ask myself, and I'm not recalling why I asked this, I was starting to ask, what is on the other side of grief? What's on the other side? And I wasn't even sure I wanted to go there because I knew what grief was. I knew what sadness was, but I wasn't sure I wanted, like, it was scary. I was comforted. I knew what I was doing in grief. And I somehow, once I said it, things started to change. And you have to want to get on the other side of whatever it is, fear, grief, sadness. It is very difficult because people don't want to. They want to stay where they are, even though it's horrible, even though they're in prison. They're not happy, but it's so scary. What if nothing's on the other side? What if I get there and nothing's there? And what I found, oh my God, you know what was there? I was there. I was there. I was waiting patiently for me. but a stronger version, more courageous, more confident. I was waiting for me all the time. And it's a very scary it's a very scary journey because you don't know what will be there. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more with you that I want to ask you, since you brought that topic up, about this concept that I coach people on about acceptance. And I always talk about in the sense of acceptance doesn't mean we like it or we agree to it, but we take a situation fully for what it is and truly become the observer of our life. And I think acceptance also means that we stop fighting with reality of what's gone on. What are your thoughts about acceptance and that role that plays in the grief process?
Well, I think that I haven't thought about it that way, actually. I think that we just have to, yeah, we do have to, everything's here's for a reason. I believe that. And I believe that once we accept what is, that's another place that we start to heal. Once we start to accept it for what it is, I mean, we don't know why. I mean, people do pass away, but we don't know why or when or how. We don't know the reasons. But once we accept what's going on and we trust it, we start to heal. And it's a strange thing too, but to say, but there's a gift in everything. And I know that doesn't mean you want the person not you want this to happen to somebody, but there's something that comes out of it that's so incredible when you give yourself a chance. And that's part of the acceptance. When you give yourself a chance to heal, it's almost like the person that comes out, it's almost unbelievable. It's almost like you're not ready for it. It's daunting. It's so incredible and amazing. And there is a gift. There are so
I'm
many things that I would not have done if I hadn't gone through this. I would not have become a coach. I would not have written books. I was supposed to do that. I would not have. I would have just gone along my life, what I was doing. I wouldn't have done this. So there are reasons, there are gifts that our life is supposed to go on a certain path. Yeah.
I really love that because that's something that I share with people a lot. And I don't expect people who are listening to this podcast who have just lost somebody or going through really heavy grief to understand what I'm about to say, because I sure as heck didn't when I was in that situation.
Mhm.
But there is always a gift and a lesson and a blessing in these
Yeah.
moments, even in the worst of moments when you lose somebody. That even in
Yeah.
the worst of that, there's always a gift. And you may
Right.
not always see it, by the way, right then and there, and you're likely not going to. But
Right.
there will come a time on your journey where that will show itself to you. And it will come in the form not of this, like, oh, I'm free and I'm happy, yay. Like, it's going
No.
to come this, wow, that was really powerful. I never saw that. And it's
Right.
almost like a very grounding feeling.
Yeah. Because there's a bigger, for people who believe in, that the universe is, got the tapestry and it knows what's going on. For people that understand that and believe in that, there's more that's going on than we realize. So there's us living on our, this one layer. This happened. We have a life. We're sad. We get it. That goes on. That's real. That doesn't get taken away from you. You have grief. You're sad. You don't want the person to go. Absolutely. That doesn't change. But another layer, there are other reasons that are going on. And you don't see those reasons at all. It could be for years later. Years later. For me, it was like 6 years later. For some people, it's 10 years later. So, and once you allow yourself to see that, you're like, there's something bigger at play here. There is something bigger at play here. No.
That's what I think is powerful about that. And that's why I always say that grief is a personal transformation journey. It really is. And
Yeah.
it's in the throes of it, by the way, we don't see these things because we're dealing with a lot of very heavy emotions. Our life just went 180 from what we thought it was, or what we were used to, by the way, no
Right.
longer exists. And so
Right.
now the future we thought we were going on, like you said, I might have been cruising along my life just doing what I'm doing, but then
Mhm.
this happened and now I'm on this course over here. And
Right.
I think that that's a place for, where I bring up acceptance is that this is going to take you on a different journey. And yes, it's very uncertain, it's very unknown. But in the end of the day, what I always love that old school phrase of hindsight's 2020, because you'll never see this in the moment, but you'll look
Yeah.
back where you are today and go, oh, okay, well now I get it. Now I see it.
Absolutely. And when things happen, what that taught me also, after that, I really, it broke open so many things for me that even now when something happens and it's disappointing or something's not right or it didn't work out, I'm like, okay, wait, something's going on here. There's a bigger gift. And it taught me that. And sure as hell, there's a bigger gift. If I just wait and hold on, there's a bigger gift. There's something better in store. So there's something just bigger at play. And it doesn't diminish our grief. That has nothing to do with it. They're two little, like a parallel world, you know. We have our world and we're trying to get up in the morning, basically, and get through the day. That's our world when we have grief. But then there's this other thing going on in the background. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's where grief sets the foundation for us to step into that new side of our life, that new life that's waiting for us. And that's why I always say that I don't think grief is something that you get over or you move on from. I don't think it's that. I
Mm-mm.
really do think it's something that we have to move through it to understand it. And we also have to move forward with it on our journey. And that's
I
where I think
agree.
that it has so much purpose and so much meaning in our life. And that's why I don't think we give it enough credit sometimes because we do get caught up in the motions of life. And sometimes I think it's a great place to pause and reflect and say, that was a hard chapter of my life. It was hard to lose Bob. It was hard to lose my son. But had those
Hmm.
things not happened to me, I wouldn't be where I am today without that. I wouldn't
Yeah.
be out there doing what I can do.
Yeah, there's a bigger purpose that's happening and that's very hard to get for people to understand. Also, if there are people that are talking to friends or whoever that aren't getting and understanding it, they could really not help you feel better, not help you move on, or they want you to move on so fast. That's not what it is. You have to do it in your own way, in your own, on your own pace. Nobody can tell you when to do something. You learn, you evolve at your own pace. And people just have to relax, and not want to push anybody forward. You have to do it on your own time, learn in your own way. Like maybe somebody listening to this podcast will be like, oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. That's how we learn, you know? Uh,
Yeah, I think that's what we have to give ourselves the opportunity for is that I'm a firm believer that all of us are on a different course of life. And some of us are going to get there sooner, some of us are going to get there later, and most of us will get there in the middle road of things. It's just, it's for us to compare each other in our
oh,
journeys and our experiences and to say that somebody's not healing fast enough or going through
oh,
grief fast enough. It doesn't allow that person to have the experience they need to have. And
right.
there really is no sense in rushing it too, by the way, because it's going to unfold as it needs to unfold.
Exactly. Yeah. And like for me, I didn't even know if it was ever going to unfold. That's okay too. Something I had to learn, I had to go through it to just however long that took for me to figure things out. I mean, it took as long as it takes as long as it takes. And that's all that there is to it. And if we could help people understand it, that's the big thing, is helping people get through it, breaking it down. I love breaking things down for people because sometimes the concept is difficult and you just break it down. They're like, oh, okay, I get it. I get that, you know?
I love
Yeah.
that. Share with us a little bit about your journey into becoming a coach. How did that transpire after going through this grief process?
It's so odd because at that 6-year period, when I started to take out my journal to write a letter, and the word I didn't need to, and I wasn't sad about it. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I don't have anything else to say. At that same time, I had been starting during that like 5th year, going to the 6th year of grieving. I started to think about, I really want to start writing. I have a lot to say, of a lot of thoughts. I mean, I always liked writing and journaling, but I wanted to share things. It just started happening that way. And then I'm like, coaching was sort of becoming popular. I'm like, well, I had been a leader and I'd gone through this. So those are two things that could work together because I love leading people. I love uplifting people. I love helping people. I love nurturing people. So when I had a staff, the best part of that position was nurturing. Seriously, I love developing people and I really cared about people. And I thought, well, I could do that. That's what I'm supposed to do. And so I don't know why after 5 years, that's what I mean. I started to become who I was supposed to be. Like I was just evolving into that next level, that next phase, whatever that is. And now I'm developing into something, like everything keeps we keep evolving because the world keeps evolving. And I just came out of that thinking, yeah, that's what I think I want to do. I think I want to get a certificate, a coaching certificate, and I'm going to write a book. And I started with writing, I wrote a journal. That was my first book that I wrote. And it was an empowering journal. Everything is about empowerment or building confidence or self-love or all of that stuff, because people really do not like themselves. They say they do, but they don't.
Yeah,
So there's a
what
lot. I just wanted to put all of this information out there for people. Yeah.
what's been some of the most transformative experiences you've had as a coach?
Mm, for me, well, I mean, every time somebody gets an aha moment is just an incredible feeling. If I could break a concept down that somebody's told them like for years and years, and I'm like, here it is, done. This is, because I don't let people wallow in trying to figure things out. Sometimes they just really need the answer. They need the path. They need the guidance. So, but I love breaking things down for people, whether they're, I help a lot of people that are new to leadership. So how do I do this? How do I manage people, or how do I do this? And so I love doing that. I love helping them with that. It's so rewarding. It's so rewarding breaking concepts down for people so that they get them and that they're like, oh, that's what I need to do. And it just makes me feel so good. Yeah. And
I
people
love
also have had a loss too. That's not the kind of coaching I do, but I do that because it's just breaking concepts down for people. So life just becomes easier, and then they become happier, and then the world becomes better. That's what I'm all about. So yeah,
That's one of my favorite things about coaching that I enjoy too, is watching people have those breakthrough moments. Because I
yeah,
do think that there's a lot of, especially when we go through grief, I feel like that's when all these issues in life come up, when we really are forced to face them. And we don't always know how to face them. Sometimes we are so conditioned and so programmed in our lifestyle that's been for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and we've never taken time to question our beliefs, question why we think a certain way, question why we do things the way we do. And
yeah.
sometimes we don't always know there's a better way.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah. It's great. Anybody that can help someone have that breakthrough is like, it's just genius, really. Because sometimes it's not simple once you break it down, but once you break it down for somebody and they have that aha moment, oh, you've changed their life. You've pretty much changed their life. It's incredible.
Yeah, I'm working with a woman that's 59 years old, and I've been guiding her through some coaching sessions. And one of the big beliefs that came up was just this concept. She said, "Well, Chris, I wasn't raised this way. I was told to be this person and do things this way and think this direction in my life." And I said, "Well, how's that working out?" And she said, "Well, I'm not happy because I want this and I want that and I want my life to change in this way." And I started to actually hearing that person that was buried in belief systems that everybody else told her how to think and feel and
Yeah.
behave. And I watched this person break through that stuff and step into her own power and step
Yeah.
into this place of, I'm done living that life. I want to go create this thing over here.
Yeah.
And it's so empowering to watch people move through that process because she's going through a lot of grief. She's lost mom and a dad and an uncle that were very close to her, and dealing with
Mm,
a whole bunch of estate planning, all sorts of probate, all sorts of stuff like that. And
mm,
I commend this woman for so much strength because she did grow up in a different time era than I did, and she grew
mm.
up in a different culture and belief system than I did. And so
Yep.
and I think what's really fun in the coaching world, by the way, is like we have our individual life experiences which help
Mm.
us coach people, but we also
Right.
learn from the people that we
Oh,
coach.
absolutely. Absolutely. And you talk about limiting beliefs. I always think back to, I always have my own stories because um it's important for people to know. So two beliefs I grew up with that I was like, what? Once I understood that what a limiting belief was, and I was carrying it around like wet cement. One was that my parents were very nice, but I was a terrible student in school, whatever. I must have done something as a kid. And they said, you better marry rich. Wow. I was carrying that along for a long time. It was like, A, you're not capable. It's like there was so much information in there. And then the other thing was whenever I wanted something, because I enjoyed the finer things in life, my parents would be like, that's for rich people. So we grew up in a lack mentality. And once I understood what that was, I was like, once you get rid of those limiting beliefs, and what I always tell people to do, that when they pop up, right away, when you recognize them, right away, recognize them and rewrite your story. Just rewrite your story, but it has to be something you rewrite that's believable. Otherwise, it won't matter to you. So it's sort of like you're not going to say, I have $1 million, but you're going to say, you know what, I'm really doing well. And I feel really good about myself. And you know what, I'm doing okay. I'm earning it, like make it believable. Do away with those limiting beliefs. So rewriting stories are very important to me. Yeah.
No, I think that's powerful because what I've learned along my coaching journey and things that I've been training for is that we have very subconscious embedded beliefs in ourselves, and a lot of people don't know this. I share this in my grief coaching too, but when I ask somebody a question like, "How many times did you breathe in and out in the last minute?" and they'll look at me and go, "I don't know." Like, and then I say, "How many times did your heart beat, or do you know how fast your heart's beating right now?" And they go, "No, I don't know." I use these examples to say your body runs on autopilot 95% of the time, and this thing
Right.
up here does the same thing.
Right.
And it does this, by the way, with what you've conditioned it with, what you've told it is okay, what you've allowed, what you tolerated, what other people have taken on. And I always say that, from a young age, just like you brought up how your parents said, well, you better marry rich. That wasn't even your own belief. That got pushed on you to say, "Oh, well,
Yeah.
you should take that on." And it's like,
Right.
"Well, now wait a second. I'm a smart person. I'm capable of a lot of
Right.
things." That's where you can question that limiting belief and
Yeah.
really, as you said, rewrite your story. And I love that you said that, by the way, because I'm a big fan of
Yeah.
rewrite it with something empowering about yourself and not about other people.
Absolutely. And when something like that happens too, what it teaches us also, because parents don't do it to be mean. Well, some parents do, but in general, nice parents, they don't. It's just something that they said. They don't realize it's going to do harm. And what it's taught me over the years is to be careful, to try to be careful when I'm doing that. My kid is like amazing, so creative, so amazing. But even so, I'm careful to be like, wait, how am I going to say this? Because I'm thinking it's some flippant remark, but it's not. It could stay, it could last. So it teaches us as we're dealing with other people ourselves to be careful how we're saying things, not to measure every word, but to just be careful. How is it going to impact somebody? Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really powerful, Sheila.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I I want to ask you, when did you decide this process to write a book, and what was it like going through the process of writing your book, Party for One?
Uh, yeah, what I would do is I would, come I love going out and writing. Actually, my process, for some reason when I'm out having a meal, I bring my little iPad with me and I'm able to, because I always bring something with me when I'm eating out on my own, like a prop. I always started to do that. And so I love writing. I'll have my Prosecco, I'll have my meal. I take my time. I don't rush. I'm like the person who belongs in a French cafe in Paris. So, and I would think of scenarios, and sometimes it was difficult. It's been a long time. So I would look at my letters sometimes, but sometimes I would just remember like a funny story and then refer back. I'm like, oh yeah, what was that? And I would just write a little, because they weren't like chapters. Every moment was a scenario. Every page was a new moment. Okay. And some were happy, some were not, some were, so these little moments. And I decided as I was going through it to divide it into 4 sections. I thought, okay, I need to structure it. So as I was doing it, I had taken a memoir class actually, which was very helpful because I needed to do that. There's a woman by the name of Alison Wearing. She's in Canada. She does it really an incredible class. Anyway, so she taught, how to do a memoir. And then I took that information, I made it my own, and I structured it into 4 sections: honor yourself, believe in yourself, be yourself, find yourself. And once I did that, I'm like, oh, which stories or vignettes would fit into those? And then I would just write the vignettes and then decide where they belonged. So I remember towards the end of the book, there's one vignette where Bob is ill. It's a little sad. I don't usually do sad ones, but that one's a little sad. So that's towards the end of yourself because it was more about finding myself. Another one was when I decided to move back to Chicago. I actually remember this. It wasn't a memory about Bob and me, but it was something more about me because it was toward the end. That arc was now, okay, now I'm going past that. And I wrote that I was journaling one day. This actually happened. I was journaling one day. I was living in Seattle. I knew I wanted to move back to Chicago, and I was journaling. But what's propelling me? I kept thinking, what is it? I wonder why I have such a desire. I knew we had a good life in Chicago. We'd lived here together. It's Bob's home and all of that. And then I wrote in my journal, well, maybe it's to find someone. And my pen seriously kept writing, maybe it's me. I'm like, oh my God. And I put that in Party of One because so I would go out a lot and I would think of a scenario every time I would sit down and be relaxed. You can't do it. You can't force yourself to write. I don't force myself to write. I just enjoy it. And I do free write in the morning, every morning anyway. So when I would free write, I would just see what would come up. I don't want to, you can't press yourself into it. You just have to flow into it. And then all of a sudden I would remember a story and I'm like, oh my God, I almost forgot that story. I should put that in the book. And then it became, once I had the 4 sections, that then became easier. Yeah, that was better.
I I love you how you describe that process of going out to eat while you're out there dining. I just think that's so. I just love that your book is called The Party of One, and you telling us the story of how you wrote this book. It's just so fitting. It's so you and so
Yeah,
authentic. I
yeah,
love that.
yeah.
Well, Sheila, as we wrap up the podcast today, I just wanted to first off just say thank you so much for coming on today and not only sharing Bob's legacy and who he was as a person, but to share how your grief journey of losing him sets you on this course to become a coach, to become an author, and how you're actually out there helping people in a much bigger capacity than you would have been had you not gone through grief. I think that's such an inspiring story that I'm sure listeners today are going to have a lot of takeaways as they listen to your episode.
Thank you. Yes, I love this. This was great. You had so many amazing, amazing things to think about for myself. Yeah, thank you.
And as we wrap up, I usually ask my podcast guests a couple questions. One of them is going to be if you find somebody who's going through grief right now or somebody that maybe feels stuck in their grief, what's one thing you would share with them to help them navigate that journey just a little easier?
Yeah, I would say, and I do think journaling is very important. I would try to write down all the ways you want to celebrate that person, because what that does is it's not telling you to forget, it's not telling you to get over it, but it's shifting you into celebration. So I would offer that suggestion. Yeah.
I I really love that because as in my brain right now, I'm thinking about how you had a crossword puzzle at Bob's celebration of life, and I think
Mhm.
that's just such a great example of making that minor shift of
Yeah.
celebration of life, and that puts you in a place, by the way, of honoring and remembrance of that one that you lost, and I think that's a beautiful bit of
Absolutely.
advice.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Thank you.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
and Sheila, where can we find your book, Party of One? If listeners want to find that and purchase the book, where can they go to find that?
Yeah. And Party of One is on Amazon. And it's actually, I don't know if you're going to show it, but it's actually also on Kindle now. I figured out
Uh,
how to do that. So you can get the paperback version or the Kindle version, and it's on Amazon. It's actually also, the paperback version is also on Barnes and Noble. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I'm gonna have the links that you sent me in your email in the show notes for listeners so that they can go find the book. I do hope that they get a copy of that because after hearing the story today, I'm inspired to go read it myself. I just think that's a beautiful process that's come out of your grief journey for you. Um, so Sheila, again, I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show today, and it's been a true honor to get to meet you.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been lovely. Thank you. I can't thank you enough.
And I want to thank all of our listeners today for joining Sheila and I on today's episode of the Empower Grief Journey podcast. If this episode resonates with you, please share it with somebody you know who could benefit from Sheila's story. For more episodes that are designed to empower you and support you during your grief journey, visit empowergriefjourney.com and subscribe to this podcast. You can find us on Apple and Spotify. The Empower Grief Journey is all about honoring your journey, embracing your emotions, and finding strength in your own time. You're never alone on this journey, and together we can navigate grief with courage and compassion. Until next time, be kind to yourself and take your grief journey one step at a time.